Alright, so welcome to the retouching portion of our test look. Now before we actually get into the retouching itself, let's talk about how we would go about selecting images and what to look for within the test looks. So things depend kind of on the agency you're working with. So sometimes the agency will want you just to select the images, edit them, and send them over. Other agencies will want you to send them a contact sheet. So with the contact sheet, basically you're going to go through and you're going to pick, maybe a couple of images per look, build a sheet that basically just, looks like little slides on a page. 8, not 9 slides probably per page is good. It's good enough size that they can actually see what they're getting without, requiring you to send over 100 pages. So generally, my advice is to stick to about 5 images per look, depending on how many variations, I guess, you have of full length and tight images in there. If you have a lot of variation, then maybe it'll be a little bit more. And again, it will depend by agency. Some agencies will prefer you to send just a few images for them to choose from. Others are okay with you sending 20 or 30 per look. So again, just ask them what their expectations are before you start on anything. Obviously, narrow it down carefully. I mean, if there's anything where you've missed focus or the light looks bad, don't send it over to them. Regardless of how good the model looks, if it's lit poorly or if it's out of focus, shouldn't ever make it into your list. So that's obviously first thing you can do is eliminate anything that matches that criteria. Now, as far as actually selecting it, what I usually do, I would send 4 to 5 images personally, because ultimately you're the photographer, you're the artist, and you should know what you're looking for in a good image. And so I think the less you send the client, the more it shows that you know what you're talking about, and it's just less choice for them. I think too much choice is a bad thing. So 4 to 5 images, that should really be your goal. But again, ask the agency what they expect. Now, if the agency is giving you carte blanche to essentially pick the images for them, that's fine too. You can just go ahead and select it, but obviously you have to know what to look for, and you have to know how the model is positioned. Is she a lifestyle model? Is she a commercial model? Is she, an editorial sort of high fashion model? All that will weigh into your decision. So looking at this first image over here, I think it's not a bad image. A couple things that I maybe don't love about it would be the hand placement here. I don't like that the fingers are cut off over here by the stomach. And then same on this side, that we just kind of see the thumbs popping out. So I would like to see, ideally, that hand, the fingers slide forward over into here and just kind of gently curled and placed on the waist. The feet are actually okay. I mean, I like that it's not just a plain stance, but at the same time, it's not really making her look as tall as she actually is. So for that reason, I'm not in love with the pose. Now, if we go to this next one, we're actually looking a lot better as far as hand placement, because we're really only dealing with this hand that still has a bit of a problem, but this one actually is a lot nicer kind of draped down. We get, again, it looks like her arms are nice and long. We have a separation here between the arm and the waist, which we obviously want because that just emphasizes, how lean she is. Foot placement is about the same as with the previous image, so it's not something that I'm in love with. And the expression is, it's good enough. It's not really telling enough for me personally, but it's passable for a test image. For this one here, I'm really more including it for examples, what to look out for that we don't necessarily want. So for this here, I like the fact that she's on her tippy toes. It looks a little bit different. She does look fairly skinny here. What I don't like, though, is that she's on her tippy toes, but it looks a bit awkward. Like, it looks like she's sort of in between poses here. So it's kind of getting there, but it's not quite there. Other thing I'm not in love with is the hand placement here. It's her hand is pressed fairly tightly against her stomach, and we don't want that. We want things gently placed. And also, I don't really like that it's placed downward the way it is. So down can be okay, but ideally it's coming down and in. So that's just another thing that I'm not in love with about this particular image. Over here, I actually like this image. I think this is a good image to use as a test image, and we could just as well edit this one rather than the one we're going to do. But what I like about it is, here the hand placement is going a little bit more downwards. It doesn't feel as awkward as it did in the previous one. With this here, I don't know, we've got a lot going on here, and it just feels a little bit strange the way things bend here. We just have the thumb going down, so the hand looks fairly natural. We get a little bit of the fingers wrapping here, so it looks okay. Now here we can also see the footwork, the problems we had in the footwork before have been kind of sorted out here. It looks a lot better. She's kind of got some attitude to her pose, and we've got that that nice toe popping up and giving that nice line through the legs. So this is a good one. And again, the expression here is semi-neutral, but at the same time it's telling something. Like, it's got a little bit of something behind the eyes. So I think this is a perfectly good image to use as a test image. Now going to the next shot, this one is also perfectly acceptable. I actually think I prefer the arm down because I think, again, it creates those nice lines kind of going through. We've got a line here, a line here. Similarly, we could maybe drop this hand down and just kind of rest it against her thigh and then have this one out, because then we'd have sort of lines going this way. So lots of different options as far as the posing. Now, I think between the two, I would lean maybe towards this expression just because the eyes feel a little bit closed in this one, but also this one would be a perfectly acceptable test shot to work with. Over here, again, I kind of like the playful nature of this particular pose here. Again, it will all depend on how the model is positioned. If she's positioned as more of a lifestyle model, this will work fine. If she's more sort of high fashion editorial, then we don't necessarily want this more friendly demeanor. We want something that's a little bit edgier. On to this next one here, again, kind of similar, really just variations in pose. This one here, again, looks pretty good. I kind of like the leg position here. I think it works. What I'd like to see here is just a little bit more separation on that. So just kind of cocking that elbow out slightly just so we can see a bit of a gap there. But again, looks, pretty good. Her body looks nice and lean, and that's the most important thing. Expression, again, the eyes feel a little bit closed to me, so it's maybe not my favorite expression, but again, workable for a test look. Now on this next one here, this is really, again, just to give you an example of what a difference it makes when the model turns her waist slightly away from you. So we can see over here just how skinny she looks, and obviously she's very skinny, she's a model, but you can just see the difference of, of what that turn makes. Even though she still looks skinny here, this just looks a lot more flattering and just creates nice lines through the body. So some models can pull off the straight on look, and I'm not saying this one can't, but I pretty much always prefer a slight angle in the waist. It just looks better. So moving on to our next look, you can kind of see the difference between this one and the previous one, where we had these dark pants and, you kind of lost some of that length in the legs. Now, this one obviously also has the benefit of very high heels, so that makes her look even taller. But I think what makes a big difference here is the fact that the skin tone being light just helps to create separation between the two legs and just, makes everything look a lot longer. So this image, actually, I do like it. We have a nice separation here. Ideally we would see a little bit here, but it's okay because we can clearly see how small her waist is, how long and lean she is. So this is, I think, a pretty good one. Again, the pose is a little bit, the expression is a little bit softer here, but I think it's workable. It's kind of a come hither pose, I guess, or come hither expression, I would describe it. But, perfectly acceptable, it all depending on, again, positioning of the model. Looking at this one here, again, I like this image. I think it's a perfectly acceptable one for a test look. We could just as well use this one as well as some of the other ones. So again, I like the pose. We got some nice kind of lines going through the body here. Nice extension. We can see just how lean she is. We've got that nice separation in between the arms. So perfectly acceptable image to use. This one here, again, same thing. I kind of like what's going on here. It's a little bit different, maybe a little bit of a sense of motion. So also one that we could use, and it's really just a toss-up between these two here. I think maybe expression-wise, both are pretty much about the same, I would say. So definitely good options there. This one here, I think it's kind of leaning a little bit more, a little too much to the side. So for that reason, I probably wouldn't use this one. I mean, I like kind of what's going on with the legs here. They look nice and long, but again, we would like to see a little bit of a gap here, and I think she's just feels like she's leaning a little bit too much on this one. So I'm not going to use that one. Now I'm going to skip over this next one. We're going to go to these last two because the next one is the one we're actually going to edit. So with this one here, actually, again, good image for a test look. We see that this time she's rotated the other way. Same effect, though. She looks nice and skinny, tall. The only thing that maybe I don't love about this image is that we have these arms really close to the body. So we don't quite get a sense of, how tiny her upper body is. And again, we can pretty much imagine how tiny it is based on what we see, but ideally we would like to have at least a little bit of separation somewhere in there. So maybe this arm kind of coming closer in and this one going out so that we can at least see something in the back here. Now this one here, it's a tighter shot. Again, depends on what the agency's looking for. We would never send just this sort of look. We'd either send this in combination with a full length, but we would never send it on its own. We want to make sure that we have those full length images. Now in this case, I'd probably tighten up the crop a little bit. Generally, I'd crop it maybe just above the knee here, so somewhere in around this area. The tighter you can crop, the better. I mean, with all of these, like for example, this one here, I would probably crop in a bit more, so we're just literally cutting off above the head and below the feet. That's generally what the agency will want because they want the emphasis on the model. They don't really care about, how much negative space you have. So just fit everything in, but get it as close as you can to the model. So without ado, this is the actual image we're going to edit. You may have preferred some of the other ones, and there are some good ones in there. The reason I chose this particular image is because I kind of like the awkward stance that we have here. It feels a little bit more model-esque, I guess. We have a nice kind of arch going back here. We've got that separation. We can see just how skinny her waist is, her upper body. There's a little bit of sort of attitude to the expression. So I think, overall, the elements that I'm looking for typically in a test look are all here. So this is the image we're going to look at. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go in and process the raw file, make sure that we prepare it as best we can, and then we're going to jump into Photoshop and do some light editing, because that's the whole point of a test look, is to keep things looking natural. So we're going to sort of start it with a simple editing, and then as we go through editorials and portraits and beauty shots, we're obviously going to build up and use more advanced techniques. So let's go ahead and start processing this raw file.